So David Lynch recently shared with Sight and Sound magazine that he has received a diagnosis of emphysema, which has come from his many years as an avid smoker, and as a result is no longer able to work in person. This means he's denied the privilege to ever walk on a film set again, to ever give direction directly to his cast, but despite this, he went on to say that he's never going to retire. Which is a special statement, but it got me stirring on when should a director retire? When is an appropriate time to hang it up, if there is one? Well, just to quickly clear up the Lynch situation, I commend him hugely for not giving up his passions in spite of his illness. I'm interested to see his process moving forward and how that process crafts a project. But moving on, I think it's only appropriate we look at what retirement is. Retirement is defined as the action or fact of leaving one's job and ceasing to work, which is very cut and dry, but not really. And we'll get to why not in a moment, but before that we spoke about Lynch and his plans to not retire despite his health decline, so let's talk about a director who does plan to retire despite zero health complications. Mr. Quentin Tarantino. So he's long said that he plans to retire after his 10th film. Now he has already hit that threshold technically. I don't care if he thinks Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 are one film, I disagree, but regardless, say he does have one slot left. Why? Well, he said on record multiple times that he believes that most directors have horrible last movies and that generally directors get worse as they get older, as they continue creating. And being very honest with you guys, as I always try to be, I think this is such a loser mentality, and Tarantino is very well known for loser behavior, but this to me is the worst of it all. They are beliefs built on a subjective view of other artists' catalogs rather than an informed decision about his own trajectory. He worked on a film called The Movie Critic for a very long time, doing multiple interviews over it, releasing details, taking 20 million tax credits to film it in California. He was casting it, it was in pre-production, and is now apparently cancelled. This feels like ego. This feels like he quit this film because it didn't feel like the perfect finale. It didn't feel like his best movie, and I wish someone was just honest with him and told him that he will never find the perfect finale because it doesn't exist. He doesn't view his art, his once passion, as something artful, but rather something to be perfect at and perfectly received. He's so focused on his legacy, he doesn't have respect for the art form. He cares more for his reputation than doing what he apparently loves. It's a coward's move in my opinion. If you want to retire, retire because you have nothing left. You've lost your passion, you have no more to give, you've ran out of stories. Don't retire to preserve a so-called perfect record, because the argument the directors get worse as they get older is lies. Look at all the current great living filmmakers like Spielberg, who recently made The Fabelmans, Shyamalan with his last few bangers, Ridley Scott with The Last Duel and Napoleon and hopefully Gladiator 2, Nolan with Oppenheimer, Fincher with The Killer, James Cameron with Avatar: The Way of Water. There are countless examples of legacy directors, all greats, absolutely crushing it still, and the idea of a perfect record doesn't exist because art is subjective and there's always going to be a crowd of people that don't like your films. Tarantino has plenty of films that I do not like, but that does not mean that he has a spotted record or has a spotless record. It means nothing. All you can do is release art and let people make up what they want. But to get back on point, there isn't one filmmaker that represents the idea of a director getting just as good in his late stage than Martin Scorsese. Scorsese is 81 years old, 20 years Tarantino senior, and has been making movies since the late 60s compared to Tarantino's early 90s. And I think it's insane to think he's going to be making movies hopefully even after Tarantino is finished. And 56 years into his career, his late stage is Silence, The Irishman, and Killers of the Flower Moon. That is an unbelievable run. That is a run that most directors could only hope for in their prime, and that is genuinely what Tarantino should be striving for. He shouldn't be thinking about about how some directors fall off and thinking he's going to be part of that group. He should be focusing on making a career like Scorsese. I guess he just doesn't believe in his own source, and I think a huge part of that is Tarantino's inability to evolve and branch out. He's played it safe his whole career. Every film is distinctly him, and that can only really stun you as a creator, and I think this fear of trying to be something new will always be his Achilles heel. Comparing that to Scorsese, who said in an interview with Deadline that he's got to go and get his next project started. He said the whole world has opened up to me, but it's too late, and then elaborated further that I'm old, I read stuff, I see things, I want to tell stories, and there's no more time. Kurosawa, when he got his Oscar when George and Stephen gave it to him, he said, I'm only now beginning to see the possibility of what cinema could be, and it's too late. He was 83. At the time I said, what does he mean? Now I know what he means. This is such a heart-shattering statement coming from someone who so clearly has so much more to give, who wants to give so much more, but is coming to terms with his own existence and age, knowing it could go quickly and soon. He has no plans to retire before life forces him to, and that is beautifully sweet. And when Ridley Scott was asked whether he shares the same fears of time running out as Scorsese, he said, well, since he started Killers of the Flower Moon, I've made 4 films, I don't think about it, which is also such an incredible approach from a man that's 86, 5 years older than Scorsese, but just feels so much younger due to his insatiable need to make movies still, and he does, and still does so well. The Last Duel is one of the best movies of the decade. I'm planning on doing a video about it. House of Gucci, for all its faults, is endlessly entertaining, and is well made regardless of your thoughts on the outcome. Napoleon was a very good movie, and Gladiator 2 looks like it's going to be an incredible movie, and I'm very excited for it, so it doesn't seem like he has plans on slowing down at all, and I hope he doesn't. And what if all the greats had stopped at 10? Kurosawa would have never made Rashomon, Ikaru, Seven Samurai, or Throne of Blood. Nolan would have never made Oppenheimer, Shyamalan would have never made Split, Alt, Knock at the Cabin, or Glass, Park Chan-wook would have never made The Handmaiden or Decision to Leave, Ridley Scott would have never made Gladiator or Prometheus, American Gangster, The Last Duel. Scorsese would be without The Last Temptation of Christ, Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, The Wolf of Wall Street. Spielberg would be without The Last Crusade, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. Alfred Hitchcock would have never made Vertigo, Psycho, Rope, Rear Window, Rebecca, Spellbound, Notorious, Strangers on a Train, The Birds, North by Northwest, and so many more. It's just a crazy sentiment to me. But we've had a few perspectives from the directors themselves, and of course Tarantino isn't exactly wrong all the way. There have been major fall-offs in many filmmakers' careers, but personally, I don't see that as a reason to give up. People said Spielberg had lost the magic, and then in 2022 he released The Fabelmans, which brought him back. Even though I could defend some of his films before that, especially West Side Story, I feel like that's pretty redundant here. So to bring this back round, earlier I said the definition of retirement isn't so cut and dry, so why isn't it? Well, the term work and job are very interpretive, meaning some don't consider directing a job or consider anything in the arts a quote-unquote real job. Some don't consider it work, but then again some really do and are passionate on that point. So let's take for example Dick Van Dyke. He's an actor that's been around forever. He had his own show in the 60s, he was in Mary Poppins, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and has been working non-stop all the way until now at 98, where he became the oldest person to ever win an Emmy. During an interview post-win, he said he has no plans to retire, and more specifically, it isn't work, it's play. So I guess it's all down to your approach and look on your life, how you look at your work, how you view yourself, and what your purpose is in your art. Retirement is mostly a concept for the everyday person, the capitalist slave who works every day until they're too old to remember where they work, and then they get to chill out. But I think this is even a concept because the majority of people are forced to work. They work because they need to. The majority of people have jobs to survive. They don't have work they love, and they don't love where they work. A lot of regular people, including myself, would kill to get paid to do what we love, but we don't get the privilege often. So when do I think a director should retire? Well, when they want to. After all, it's their life, their art, their passion, their reputation. Though I do still think Tarantino's reasoning is very loser-coded, and Scorsese's approach, or Scott's approach, Shyamalan, Spielberg, Fincher and all others have a more respectful and endearing perspective, I absolutely think he has the right to do whatever he wants with his career. Despite my opinions on him and his filmography, he has earned his place and his legacy, and if he wants to give up filmmaking to preserve it, then all the best to him. But that's just me. What do you think? Do you have an opinion on when a director or any artist should retire? If so, let me know, and whether it's one from a late stage filmography or not. As always, keep watching movies.